Hey everybody, welcome back to FreeMind Local. Today we are tackling one of the most important conversations of our time, mental health. I'm sitting down with Mike Kogan, founder of Princeton Mindset Group and Compel America, to talk about the rising demand for mental health services, the stigma that keeps people from getting help, and why active listening might be just the key to resolving conflict in today's divided world. We're also diving into the impact of social media, alternative approaches to medication, and a simple yet powerful way to rebuild your support network. This is a conversation you don't want to miss. Let's get right into it. Mike, how are you?
Good. How you doing, Nate?
Good. Well, hopefully this will be a little bit of a 60-minute break for you, and you can just kind of check out for a little bit.
I like that.
Perfect.
I like it a lot. Yeah.
Well, hey, I'll jump right in with everything. Well, hey, we'll start off with what inspired. Are you the founder of Princeton Mindset Group, or are you are you current owner, or did you found the organization?
I'm a founder, and I'll tell you what inspired me is, it's something I've been really, something I wanted to do as I realized it's something I've was inspired to do my entire life, I want to say, but this is something I've really focused on over the last close to 10 years. And Princeton Mindset is just really the way I formalized my work. But at the same time, and I was able to attract other people, obviously, because I wanted to work with other people, and there are other people working with me. But this is something that really I've had aspirations for, and something I've really been focused on for a long time. Over the last several years, I've decided to dedicate my life, my full-time attention to. Because of, I feel like this is something I was, created to be involved in. I feel like this is something more or less natural for me, and this is the reason for it. But I'll tell you, I work on a very individual basis, and I really focus my entire attention on who it is that I'm speaking with, what the topic is, and what I'm working on. This is something that's really deep inside, and it's something really. Once I started really working on this more closely and more full time, I realized that this is something I should have done, years and decades before, but unfortunately I didn't. But never too late is my motto, so to speak. So I kind of focus on that now.
Absolutely. And since you mentioned that you feel that intuition and that natural gut instinct to do this, I'm sure you also look reflectively on your past and you say, I should have started this sooner, but then you can find all those experiences that happened during that period that led to what made this as what it is today. So I always have those moments too where I'm like, I wish I started this earlier, but then I'm like, oh right. Yeah, 9 years ago I wouldn't have had that experience that makes sense for this now. So I have that same feeling. So I definitely connect with you on that as far as what this is with the podcast. I tell people a lot, it's more than a podcast. It's something that it's felt so natural. And then the same thing as you reflect on your life, you're like, oh yeah, I've been telling stories my entire life. So this really does make sense.
Exactly. So you know what it's like. Exactly.
Perfect. Well, hey, and what with the Mindset Group, what sort of specific mission is there? I know there's a lot of avenues for that terminology. So kind of drill down what your mission is and then who it is that you're out to support.
Sure. Let me tell you more. So what happens is, as I mentioned, I work with people. I work with trying to help people deal with their issues, their psychological issues, and otherwise, certain things that prevent them from moving forward with their life. And a lot of it is internal. A lot of it is just really, what they deal with. And sometimes they don't even know what the issue may be. And you kind of help them recognize what the problem is and help them overcome it. Princeton Mindset is just a company that I kind of formulated to be on the business side of things. And this is something which kind of allows me to unite people, to let other people come and help me, do the same thing that I'm doing. I'm also involved in another company, which I'd like to focus more on. Mm-hmm. And the name of it is actually Compel America. And I started it with several other counselors. And this is not exactly a business side of things. This is more of it's actually a nonprofit, but it really totally aligns with my values. It totally aligns with what I wanted to do. And my goal, I'll tell you, because you mentioned the goal, what's the ultimate goal of what I'd like to do? And that is really make mental health and make counseling available to everyone that needs it. Make mental health not such a taboo type of a topic where people, several people told me, well, I heard the word mental health, so I didn't want to get involved with that. So there's certainly still a negative connotation. So we created this nonprofit and we said, well, look, our goal is to make sure this is not a taboo topic. This is something that people should talk about because it's real. It's real for so many people. And a lot of people are scared to talk about it because of the stigma that still exists in the society. I understand it because I've kind of felt it myself for many years, and I've seen it in real life. But I see also how many people do desperately need such attention, do desperately need help. Some are more apparent than others, and some will talk about it in the privacy, of confidentiality, and that's fine, that's good. But then also a lot of people will be scared to even admit that they have a problem. So we created this organization to help people gain access to mental health, even if they don't want to disclose their name, even if they can't afford it, even if they don't have the slightest idea what the problem is, and they don't want others to know that they have a problem. We just said, look, come talk to us. I don't even have to know your name. I don't have to know much about you. Just tell me what the problem is. Don't be scared. Don't be afraid, because I feel like it makes for a better person right there. And if we're able to help someone, it helps the person, him or herself, and then it helps people around them. And ultimately, it makes it for a better society, I want to say, because look at what's going on. People are experiencing a lot of emotional other issues, and they don't even really truly understand where it's coming from. They don't know what the ultimate source of that is, So yeah, but that's my goal. My goal is really to help people, understand what their issues are and be more aware and be more cognizant of how approachable that is,
With you, with yours specifically, do you have like a proportionally, like age demographic wise, who's in your participating part of the nonprofit right now? Or I mean, how does it kind of break out? Sorry, yeah.
I'll tell you. So we work with anyone and everyone, but I've focused on helping adults. I would say the youngest person, the youngest individuals a couple of times we got involved in are 16, 17-year-old teenagers. But typically we focus on helping adults. We hope beyond that, there are no demographics. There are no work with men, women, anyone at any time. The reason is you never really know what the problems are. And when I mentioned we work with people that can't afford or don't want to extend their, openly seek for mental health, we basically we focus on veterans. We focus on certain groups that don't want to openly admit that they have issues, that are especially mental health issues. And we're spoken about veterans. Listen, veterans are such a group that they certainly deserve quite a bit from society. A lot of times they're not getting that help, and it's really such a great positive thing to be able to help them. And a lot of times the bureaucracy and the way things are set up don't enable them to speak freely or access mental health. So to answer your question, we work with anyone and everyone. It doesn't make a difference. But typically our goal is to really make this more well-known to people and say, look, this resource is available. And there are so many counselors that are willing to help us and say, hey, I want to dedicate my time. And I don't want to really focus on paperwork. I don't want to focus on, this person doesn't qualify because of demographics, because of some other, anything else, sexual orientation, anything else, race, religion, whatever. We don't care. We just kind of want to say, well, let's help you, the person.
Right.
Look at me, I look in their eyes and they say, well, tell me what the issue is. And I don't really care beyond that because I see the real person in front of me. And that's all that matters,
Your target audience is human beings in need.
Human beings, I gotta tell you, we focus so far on human beings only, and we don't really want to discriminate. I said, we don't focus on children only because I feel like that's a very different specialty, and I feel like I'm not the most effective when it comes to kids because I really want to kind of connect with the person on a different scale. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I had Michelle Buckley on. She's a child psychologist and or therapist and things like that a couple weeks back, and it was interesting for me to learn. Growing up, therapy was not. I was born in 1985, so growing up, therapy was not necessarily. It wasn't popular in the mainstream. It wasn't priced. It wasn't accordingly, like price wise. It wasn't something that is affordable like it is today. So it was never really an option. And then when I later in my 30s, similar to a situation like with your organization, linked up through with my recovery program of quitting alcohol after almost 20 years of same thing you're talking about with being a high functioning alcoholic. And in that sense, you don't know you're an alcoholic. You just think everything's okay because you're living in denial and everything's going well around you as far as you can tell other than yourself. So it just makes sense. So one of the things I think about is with what you're doing is, this is not a political statement by any means, but I'm going to say it in this context that every election cycle and everything like that, there's always villains and there's always heroes, and that brings animosity as well as anxiety to each end of the tether. I live in the center. I feel like the world's referee sometimes, but I want to talk about the psychological effects on both sides. I want to talk about when you live your life thinking you're constantly being attacked or everybody's out to get you and the paranoia comes, and then also the other side where you feel like you're being attacked and you are being attacked because the other one is attacking you. And then every 4 years it switches or it goes for 8 years. So with that kind of mindset of understanding that everybody's experiencing those things in different cycles, are you guys seeing, and I'm not saying now because of what's going on in the world being a little bit more extreme than it usually is, but are you seeing an increase of people that are reaching out and saying, I this is heavy, I need some help right now?
Are you kidding me? Listen, let me tell you, I want to say probably 90% of people that are coming to speak with me, and this is on the business side of things where people are actually coming for counseling. I would say 90% or more are talking about exactly that. The anxiety that has, really been unprecedented. I want to tell you, people are feeling, like you said, attacked. People don't know what to do with all the information, with all the emotions flying back and forth. And I'll tell you, like you said, it's not a political statement. To me, a political statement is that people are, getting carried away with this thing. And it's so amazing to me that at the same time, it kind of shows you the true nature of a person. So as a psychologist, you can imagine, I analyze people and I kind of see. And for me, the only true test of what really is going on with a person is to see certain things in action, to see certain reaction to certain situations, to certain things that are going on. So you can imagine with this whole, last year and obviously right now, like I said, what's going on with the world, but specifically what's going on in our country, right? So people are really, I want to say, people are to some degree polarized. So people are, I don't know if necessarily this has really existed before, but there are like sides where people are on one side and they're arguing with people on some imaginary other side. But I'll tell you what I've noticed is that people are coming to me with that anxiety that exists as a result of it, and they don't really know what to do with that, with all those emotions. But it affects people, it affects families, it affects relationships. People will come to me and say, well, my daughter is not speaking with me because of my political views. To me, that's devastating. To me, that's horrible, and that should never happen. But to me, it also indicates the certain emotional issues that the daughter and the parents are, exhibiting, and that's the thing. I always kind of say, and this is so important, and so I'm really glad you brought this up because I feel like it kind of gives us a chance to address certain imbalance that exists. And it's so important to remember that most of us don't understand politics. Most of us don't know what's going on truly. We see certain information and we react to it, but our reaction is based on our own views on things and our own life experiences, as you said, and based on that kind of preparation, we will react. And if we have other issues in our lives, and we have certain emotional problems, certain emotional imbalances, it will reflect in our reaction to something that's going on. But it's so important to remember, we don't know politics. We don't know what's going on a lot of times, and yet we react. But what's devastating to me is when people allow those things to affect their treasured relationships with their loved ones or close friends. And that to me is devastating. I always tell people, listen, there are no absolutes. What I mean is no person they look at presidents and anybody else in politics. No person is absolutely good or absolutely bad. All of us are, a mixture of things, let's say, and we're all kind of like have emotional deficiencies, emotional problems. Politicians are no different. And for us, it's the point is we're getting involved in something we don't completely understand, and yet we allow that to dictate our emotions and our relationships. That is to me, and I kind of work every time I work on that, and I think that actually helps when you kind of help people look at it differently and look at what's really important in your personal life. And also a question when, I don't want to get too deep into anxiety management, but what happens is you have to analyze what it is that you can control, you cannot control, because certain things, I'm like, okay, well, can you truly control what you see on TV and when you see certain reactions? No, you can't. And yet you're reacting, yet you're telling your close friends or your relatives, not to speak to you or something, or you challenge their views. That's improper. But I always kind of talk about it. I say, look, it's all coming from within. You have to analyze what's causing you to feel that way, what's causing you to react this way in an exaggerated fashion, because none of this is is so truly, could truly be so impacting on you. And that's so important, like you said, but it's such a tremendous issue today, as you know, and I see everyone else, because I think, by the way, just not to get carried away, but I think, abundance in information is what's different today, because like I said, when you were growing up, when I was growing up, we didn't have such access to all this abundant information. And also a lot of people did not have such voice to express themselves online and social media. So now everyone kind of sees everything. It becomes overwhelming. It becomes too much. And certain people are not designed and not really built to handle all that information. It becomes overwhelming.
And a lot of people don't realize, and I'm losing in the moment, but the federal act that was passed in I think it was the early 80s or late 70s, where the bias and opinions within the news was not allowed to occur. So there was a law that existed. That's why a lot of people talk about the heyday of news. They're like, oh, we got 3 channels and it told us the news and just the facts. Nobody talks about the fact that there was a law that made that what it was, and then it was rescinded. And I'm not speaking on a political belief of it, but I am speaking from a media standpoint and a business standpoint that we did not have the misinformation because there was laws that protected misinformation on television.
Sure.
And it was protected in that sense. And but it's one of those things that I really appreciate you saying, because another thing about growing up that was different, and this isn't a days were better, it's actually worse, because there's things I see about it that I understand. Now, those people that cut off family, get divorced, do all those things because of their political beliefs. But I think the underlying thing is, and somebody like yourself, I can talk about this, and I've experienced this in relationships in my own life, that avoidance personality is deeper than just politics.
Right.
And most likely, like those types of decisions and that behavior is transcends through that person's entire life.
Absolutely.
And that's where also, I guess I didn't know how deep I wanted to get into this, but I do want to get into this because it's really important right now. And I think, I talk a couple of episodes about Mel Robbins. I'm a big fan of Mel Robbins and her let them theory. I'm also a big fan of the fact that people need to understand the let them theory is not a new theory that Mel Robbins created. You know what I mean? Like the let them go. Yeah. The other thing is it's gone to an extreme, though, where it's a justification for being in avoidance. And then that's where I guess you hit the nail on the head on that one, where it was like, we went to extremes. Ricky Gervais has a really great thing about talking about being a centrist, where he talks about the line and everybody's in the middle, and then it just goes extreme, and then they meet. And that's that. It's not, I guess we didn't. One of the things was, it was the rule, I guess, is what I would say, is when you were in social settings in the 90s and the early 2000s, it was like no religion, no politics. And like, that was the rule. It was like, that was the social rule. And I saw benefits in that, and I still see benefits in that looking back. But now it is different, because the politics aren't just a charade show that goes on. It's really something that affects real lives. And I think all of our lives have become so complicated, and not complicated, but layered, and complexly layered, that I think it affects people more than they think. And I think the hardest part about it is, as somebody that doesn't choose an extreme on either side, when I look at the extremes being chosen and people choosing that hill to die on and ignoring other attributes of other people, like, I lived my life differently. My personal experience that I look at life, I was adopted. I don't know anything about my history. I was adopted the day I was born. I know nothing about anything. So I learned later in my 30s in therapy, looking back at my life, that I was always a very personable person. I was always sociable. And the first thing when I meet somebody new is I always am looking at what they're doing, what they're wearing, blah, 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 because I want to find the easiest way to connect with them.
Right.
And I learned that that's from that. That's from that, because my life subconsciously is going to be a constant search to find my, whatever. And I accept that. But I also now have learned that that is the superpower that's allowed me to be a connector and a bridge builder to a lot of different communities. And when I look at my life, in the cafeteria in middle school or high school, like, I went to every table. I didn't sit at the same table every day. I didn't sit in the same seat every day. I didn't sit with the same friends. I was in the theater program while on the football team, while on the wrestling team, while in the band. You know what I mean? It was like, And so my point about that is, I also think with that, the polarization that has existed with those extreme beliefs has also reflected on activities as youth and young adults, where it's like, okay, and that's gotten more extreme, because even when I was a kid, I was looked at differently. Like, I was called gay for being in the theater. I was, all those different things by guys on the football team, by guys on the wrestling team. And then in reverse, you get called jock, meathead, all that stuff from the theater people. So I was never winning in any of these arguments until I got past the layers of the onion to where we all agree. And so I think my interpretation and my perception of the world is much different than a lot of people, because I've constantly been in a tug of war with different cliques in school or different social groups. So when I'm talking about that, my little bit here is, I'm not saying that we need to all be in agreement with everybody on everybody's opinions, but I think at the same time, the number one thing, and I hope that you kind of see this the same way from a professional standpoint, is we need to take more time to get to know people. It's like we're treating relationships the way we treat our news articles, where we're judging on the headline and we're not reading the article.
Correct. Oh no, listen, you have no idea how right you are, and I'll tell you. And a lot of times I tell people, well, there's a more fundamental problem. So it's like I said, we have to spend more time, but it's all in mindset. The mindset is sometimes to be defensive. What I mean by that is, let's say you have an opinion about something, and you, instead of listening to the other person, whoever it may be, especially family or close friend, you defend your position instead of saying, okay, let me listen to that person's position. I don't have to agree, but let me allow them. Let's be balanced. What I mean by that is, my opinion is no different than his opinion. I strongly believe in what I believe in. That person believes in what they believe in. I have to respect, and it comes with respect. Now we forget that. I think a lot of times we get carried away. And as you said, you should take time to not only learn about the other person, but even let the other person exist, so to speak, and have their opinion. And there's nothing wrong with that. But what I think is also important is that, like I said before, social media and people who've gotten voice and who've gotten a chance to communicate with thousands and thousands of people. What I've noticed lately, there's such a notion as a negative person. What I mean by that is, person on one side of the spectrum, like I said, extreme, but they have such an influence. They have this social media platform now that they can really affect and be heard by so many people. And there's a huge difference, and I talk about it a lot with people. There's a huge difference between a pessimist, someone looks at things somewhat negatively, and a negative person, because a negative person will actually look to speak to as many people as possible and really spread their opinion, try to infiltrate their minds, to kind of spread the idea. And it's, in my opinion, it's wrong on either side of the spectrum, makes no difference. And that's where that tolerance, the ability to listen to other people will try to indoctrinate what they believe into others instead of, and it comes with the defensive mindset, meaning that you're trying to defend and you're trying to spread, you're trying to convince the other person that what you believe is more valid and more important than what they believe. And I think that's fundamentally what should be explored and changed in most people, because you want to be tolerant, you want to be explored, like I said, the way you were exploring, because you said, well, I know what I know, but let me see what the other side of things may be. And that's the mindset, I think, that wins in life ultimately. Why? Because you are accepting, and this is the way that I feel like society should be. But think about this. People are very different. Like, you're one way, I'm a different way. Certain people are not designed to have this negative information flowing at them nonstop all day long. They don't know what to do. And they react. And like I said, their own insecurities, their own inner problems from before come out. And they come out in the most in the ugliest ways, because they start to affect their life. They start to give them anxiety. It severs relationships. It's just all sorts of problems that come out, and nothing is more. Not. It's so sad for me to see, and I try to kind of talk to people, and I try to get to them on a fundamental level, and I say, well, what's more important in your life? Let's analyze what's really going on. What else is happening? Because you don't want to challenge their beliefs. I think it's right. A little different, but you want to kind of talk to the person, see what's really going on in them. And think about this. He said, look, it used to be the fact that you never talked about politics, you never talked about religion. Why is that? Because those are the things that people feel strongly about, and most of the time they'll fight to defend their point of view instead of accepting what the other person is doing. And that's the hardest thing to do. It's so hard to take a step back and say, let me listen. And I think that listening part is really long gone in our society.
Hey creators, founders, and dreamers, the FreeMind Network is brought to you by Cowabunga Johnny, where nostalgia meets creativity. Cowabunga Johnny creates custom cards that are perfect for personal keepsakes, team recognition, or even promotional items. These cards pop with personality and make an unforgettable impact. But that's not all. Cowabunga Johnny also crafts larger-than-life murals and nostalgic pop culture-inspired art. It's about connecting with your audience through bold, memorable visuals. Want to learn more? Visit cowabungajohnny.com and see how he's turning memories into art that connects. Let's create something amazing together.
That is, and one thing I'm glad you brought that up is I learned that with doing this podcast. If you were to go back to the beginning episodes 4 years ago when I started this, even the listening part, I learned how to listen properly because of this podcast. So if you go through the first 10 episodes, I'm kind of interjecting, I'm interrupting, I'm cutting people off because I needed to get my word out because I felt like I was the host. I don't know what I was thinking, but as I listened to it and now listen to these, it's much different. And for me, I've had that transcend the rest of my life. Like it's reflected positively on my personal relationships, my business, everything. And I've learned a lot about and through therapy and things like that. So I don't want to, by no means am I trying to, I want people to understand that I advocate what you're doing because I didn't get here on my own. I'm not like, I got here from a massive support system of friends and family and therapists and professionals that helped me get past the substance abuse, get past the anxiety, get past the abandonment issues, and really begin to like start putting back into the world. And I think, like I said this a couple weeks ago, and I mean it, is like my goal with this is similar to yours, is I'm not sick of the politics and the other stuff. I'm sick of people being lost. And what I mean by lost is a couple things. I also mean that by lazy. I think 99% of the people that, and this is not a scientific fact, but I think 99% of the people that we perceive as lazy are actually depressed. Right. And I think that that's the saddest part for me because I know it because I've been there. Yeah. You know, I've been in a bedridden 6-month depression and things like that through job issues and things like that. And I want people to understand that there is a group out there, and it's not one group, it's lots of groups and lots of organizations and lots of social things. And the thing is, I also want people to understand is when they go out to these social settings, whether they're coming out or they're a couple of years into sobriety and they're reemerging back into a social scene, or they're, you know, coming out of a depression, or they're scared, or they're on the opposite side of politics today and they're scared to be in public because of honestly their skin tone, their sexual preferences, and now they're going to isolate. I fear, I get emotional when I think about it because it's one of those things that like there's so much life out here, and there's so much shit out here as well. There's no denying that. Absolutely. But once you weed through all this shit, there's a lot of good stuff out there.
No, you're right. But listen, like you just said, you know, it's okay to recognize that some people, you've gone through a journey, right? Some people don't know how to do that. Some people didn't get a chance to do that. And so it's so normal and so okay to look for that help and say, because I'm telling you, sometimes I talk to people and I just really kind of just show them a different angle based on what they have. It's not like I create something fake. And I said, look at what you have, but look at it from a slightly different perspective. Changes their entire perception. Everything is different instantly. I literally had a person since COVID, he for about 2 years couldn't get out of his apartment. He had different fears, phobias, anxiety, and this and that. Slowly start working. Now he's traveling internationally. The point is but he was unable to do that, to take those steps on his own, and that's okay. So come talk to us, and that's so important. But I'm telling you that by him improving, he actually improved everyone in his circle, his family, his friends. To me, this is all about ripple effect. But you see, like in your journey, and you talked about substance abuse. Listen, talk about stigma, right? So mental health stigma is almost similar, I guess, to substance abuse stigma, where people that have experienced that have come out of it are viewed by society as someone of a different type of
it's really we're looked at as this like shunned thing. You know what I mean? Like, yeah.
And I'm like, listen. So honestly, let's say you got on the bus. And there's a person that grabs their heart. Oh my God, I'm having a heart attack. Everyone would run and try to help that person. Now, if you come on the bus and you say, I'm experiencing something related to substance abuse, they will look at you as like a second-rate citizen. So it's all about perception. It's all about how this is all kind of like perceived in the society. And that's what we have to kind of work. But listen, what you're doing is so important by speaking out, by kind of spreading that information. So like I mentioned, we can spread something positive, or there's a lot of people choose to spread negative stuff, where they choose to spread this hate or negative information. And this, I think the idea is to encourage people to look for their best, the best version of themselves, look for positive things inside, because I can't create something in you that you don't have. I can kind of like you said, what is depression, right? Depression is when you kind of let all those negative factors overcome you to such a degree where you don't even see the positive. It just becomes so well hidden, so well forgotten, They only see the negative. They only focus on the negative 24/7 to such a level that your body just refuses to function, because the mind is totally connected to the body, right? So, but it's all, you can change that, and it's so important to offer that type of help. And we spoke about substance, we spoke about veterans, right? Imagine veterans with substance abuse, because a lot of veterans turn to substance abuse for lack of anything else they have to deal with the way they feel, which is wrong. But then they don't know any other way. So to help such people, to offer these people a way to introspectively look at themselves and look for something positive in their own life, it's precious. To me, this is what is necessary in the society today. And, like I said, I see evidence of that daily. Literally after this call with you, I'm going to have a session with someone who's dealing with exactly that type of a problem. Imagine some people come to me, in their marriage, there's political disagreements or sometimes even religious. I'm like, oh my God, well, listen, so let's look at you as a person. I don't care what you read yesterday or what you believe, that. Can you look at the other person next to you? And can you see a person like yourself in that? Like, in other words, do you see a human being with opinions, with feelings? Aren't you interested in hearing what he or she has to say? So you want to kind of feel that humanity. You want to connect with the inner part of that. And I think this overwhelming part of the information that we have access to, social media and media in general, makes people forget that. Makes people, as you said yourself perfectly, react too quickly. Don't take the time to analyze what's really going on. To take the time to look at the other person and care about their feelings. Instantly, we grab information. We formulate an opinion within 10 seconds, and then we fight tooth and nail to defend it, instead of saying, "Let me slow down. Let me listen to the other person." And it's so precious. Listen, like you said, you've gone through an improvement in that regard. You've been able to learn to listen to people more. I think that's one of the most precious skills that people need to learn today. And I think that's what you're doing, like when you spread your podcast and make it more prevalent. Yeah.
It started on a couple of different precipices and origins, but one of the ones for what we're talking about with how to talk to people, I suggest a lot of people go read Simon Sinek, Start With Why.
Yeah.
And that book, while it helps with business and understanding why you're doing things like that, it also helped personally. Yeah. And what I do is, here's a tip for anybody, and feel free to add one as well, is like when I'm meeting somebody new, I always have 5 topics that I want to discuss with that person. And they're 5 topics that change on the person. And I do it just like these podcasts. In the moment, that's just the way I do things. I naturally just I'm a genuinely curious person. Yeah. But those 5 questions are very much 5 different topics where I have a grace period where it's like, okay, I can, if he doesn't agree with me here, if she doesn't agree with me here, but then there's always some stuff that I feel like I can connect on. And sometimes we're going to go 100% failure. Sure. And that's okay. But there's other times, and a lot of the time, which is what surprisingly, when you take the time to do it, you will be surprised that majority of the people you'll have, if you did it as percentages and every finger is 20%, and you'll find that majority of the person of those 5 topics, you at a minimum 3, you'll find 3, and you'll find 3 things, whether it's sports or activities, and then from there, you can learn about the person via that topic. The other things will then come into play. While this conversation about those topics that you agree on, you're going to understand the why of the things you don't agree on.
Yeah.
Because it's natural. They're all connected. And whether it's their feelings politically, and while they're talking about some skateboarding incident that happened where the cops came in, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, well, that's why they might. And then, you know what I mean? It's like you start to realize that everybody's life is just a messy quilt.
Absolutely. And what a great example you mentioned, Simon Sinek. So many powerful lessons that he can teach, right? And what an incredible individual. But like I said, beyond business, I mean, obviously he talks about leadership a lot, but there's so many implications in the personal. And yeah, listen, it's just so important to understand is focus on what makes us similar, not focus on what makes us different, right? And I posted something before. I was traveling in Portugal internationally, and I stopped by. We were trying to literally get coffee. Stopped by this bar. So it's in Portugal, but it's an Irish bar. And there's people, oh my God, such fun going on, such positive energy. And I was going to say, listen, what a different environment, totally, because people are focusing what makes them the same. speak in 20 different languages, and I don't even know, nobody even knows what the other person's political aspiration, no one cares. They focus on what is identical about all of us, which is to have fun, to love one another, to kind of like focus on that. And I think a lot of times we forget that, and it's so good to reconnect. And it's almost like we're lacking that reminder, right? And people like Simon and others, they give such powerful lessons on that, because you kind of, you listen, you analyze what he's suggesting, you get in touch with that inner feeling that you still have. But it's just so like I really believe that a lot, as you said, a lot of people are much better off and much better individuals if they just kind of, because of their experiences, because of all the things they've gone through and some of the things they go through on a daily basis, they forget certain aspects of their own personality, and they really focus on the negative much more so than when you remind them, when you kind of like, and that's what I think people like Simon are doing, Simon Sinek and others, even Peterson, Jordan Peterson has a lot of good lessons. I mean, it depends on the topic and depends on what the aspect of the conversation is. But the idea is to look inside, and I always tell people, hey, look, don't look at the other, like learn to kind of, you want to learn to change yourself. You want to learn to, if you want to change the world around you, change yourself, change your own point of view. And that's unfortunately, I think in the society, like we forget, and people forget on a mass scale because of all that abundance, because of all the negative stuff flying around. And we focus, and listen, you mentioned 1980s, 1990s. It's just, I think maybe because of lack of information, maybe because of lack of technology, the people were much more connected on a human level, right? And I think there's no replacement for that human connection. There's no replacement for looking inside on a human level and exploring those, because we're the same people that we were in 1990 and beyond. It's just that we are surrounded, we're in a different environment, and we are reacting to it. I don't know if you want to, I mean, this one topic I always kind of talk about is, I don't work with children only because for me it's difficult to understand children, but what I see is just really mind-boggling to me. What this whole environment is doing to young people, to children, and to teenagers. And like I said, the youngest one I've worked with is a 16-year-old teenager. What I see is just really, really mind-boggling to me. And I think one day they're going to write about the over-medication of this generation and how they really put everyone on the pill. And one thing to talk about is that, look, you said it, and you said it perfectly. People have to kind of progress, and they have to grow, and they have to change inside. A lot of people don't know how, so they choose medication instead, and they say, well, let me grab a pill and I'll feel better about everything. Does that really solve the problem? Doesn't, you know what I mean? So there's a lot of.
I'm glad you brought that up, because years before I finally quit drinking, I wanted to quit drinking. There's many points over the course of my 20 years of heavy drinking that I knew I had a problem. And one of the biggest things is exactly like you just said, was understanding that. And so I went down that path, went to a doctor, and unfortunately that doctor was a pill happy doctor, let's call it that. And basically I was very honest. I was like, I'm drinking 12 beers a day minimum, and this is, that's a minimum, and blah, blah, blah. And she proceeded to put me on a medication that level that was the level that you for depression, anxiety, all this stuff. And then it was to a level where you have to get the letter from they have to do a special approval. And I'm like sitting there thinking, even in my state of mind of alcoholism, I'm like, this seems weird. Like we didn't go to a progression. It was just like we just jumped to like special agreements. And what I learned through that was very dangerous. One was because I was blacking out every day. And it was like after the third or fourth beer, I was blacking out. And the problem was, in my mindset at that time, that was fun.
Right.
What I wasn't and it was, the progression was so fast, and to where it became, the paranoia set in, all the other stuff set in. My intuition was gone. My ability to stop myself from doing certain things was gone, and it was not controllable. And it was any impulse that I had was needed to be fulfilled in that moment immediately, or everything was going to collapse. And I think that when I think about what was going through my brain then, I literally just started sweating just now, taking myself back to where that head was. Yeah. And I was constantly just like overstimulation and just grabbing everything. And now in the past 2 years, and more so in the past 10 to 12 months, it's the presence now that I've loved about life. It's the presence. And it's one of those things, like I talk to my kids a lot about. I have a 13 and a 14-year-old. So I'm right what you said about the teenager thing. Like I'm right in that right now. And I feel like they have a beautiful balance of understanding the reality and presence and the technology. That was not always the case. And luckily, I think it's now, I'm going to take a little bit of credit. And I think it's because it's being done in action as opposed to being done in words. When I was growing up, and I will make fun of my dad as he does listen to this, but it was his famous line was "Do as I say, not as I do." and like as a parent, I'm going to give advice to every parent out there. If you don't have teenagers yet, that doesn't work in 2025.
Right.
You have to live.
That's that generation. Right.
Exactly. You have to live it. You can't just read and regurgitate the books and the quotes. So I want to talk about like a little bit with that is the back when you're talking about these things, when you're talking about unity, you're talking about community. I get backlash a lot for that, where I get people like, how can you side with somebody who's doing this and doing that? And then on the verse, how can you side with somebody that's doing this and doing that? I see what we talked about. There's more layers to everything that's there. I don't condone, I don't permiss, I don't, anything that's going on either side of extremes. And I tell people, it's like, I don't believe in extremes. And the reason I don't believe in extremes is because I was extreme. Like when it comes to, like, I joke around with people where they're like, oh yeah, are you bad? Are you upset? You can't drink alcohol anymore. And I try to tell people, not only was I professionally in the alcohol industry, I was a brand in the industry, and I traveled around the country meeting breweries and recruiting breweries. I tell them, I was like, don't worry, I've had more different types of alcohol than you will ever have in your life. I said, I really look at it like I completed the game of alcohol.
Right.
So I beat the big boss.
That's it.
And the game's now on the shelf collecting dust, and I'm on to the next game. And the next game now is more of a positive game. And that's where I guess I try to, I don't know if you would agree with this, but it's like, I want more people to be comfortable with the introspection, I guess is what I'm trying to get at. Because all of that growth that came for me I read all of the books. I went to all of the classes. And when I was in that real bad state, I didn't have any money. I was broke. I didn't have insurance. This is a couple years ago. And I went through BetterHelp. And because I was like $300 a month and I was unlimited, and I was in a state where I was like, I'm making a change, but I'm going to need to do this every day because it has to be part of a routine. Right. So I started with that. And then once I got through the every single day of going to all the workshops online and all the free unlimited stuff, I then went into one-on-ones locally and in person. And that really accelerated it. But I needed that bridge and understandably, like we just talked about the stigma. Yeah. Even when I started, I should have started like that. We were talking about when we should have to make changes. Those changes, like the medication served its purpose and serves its purpose for a lot of people that I know. But it also, for me, I just 10 months ago went cold turkey, and just stopped taking everything. But I also realized that with my substance abuse and my personality, I still needed stimulants in my life. So I have tools of stimulants that I use. And growing up, we heard the term crutches. You know what I mean? Like, oh, those are your crutches. Well, now we just changed it to tools, and I actually appreciate that, not just because I use them, but because that's what they always were. Sure. It was a bullshit thing to tell people, oh, you have a crutch so that you can't do this. Well, what's the difference? Like, so if you don't, like, it's such a messed up thing to say, and we used it as a mainstream thing because it's it's like, dude, if a guy's got a broken leg and he doesn't have a crutch, what are you gonna do? Yeah. So, but anyway, going back to what I want to say is that what you're doing with the unity and community, it's this younger generation and even the young adult generation and things like that, the millennials and the Gen Zs, this is really shaping the political landscape, and the technology's there and the presence is there, where it's a different thing. I think the kids feel like, they don't feel detached because they're not, it's not like before. It was like going in the rooms and playing video games, which there is that population of the younger generation. But I think more so now they're connecting, but they're connecting digitally. So for them, it's a different type of connection. And I think that's the interesting part about 10 and 20 years from now is, what does that mean for global business? What does that mean for international politics? I'm torn between somebody like being on TikTok and getting exposed in global TikTok, which is just everybody from around the world that's putting their stuff out. Right. And my kids, while there's bad to that, you know what I mean? There's bad, nefarious people and everything, and I accept that, and we have to understand. But there's good with kids being exposed directly. Like when I was a kid, I had pen pals. I wrote letters back and forth, and I was talking to kids the other, they were going through shoebox because I kept everything, and my kids were going through shoebox like, what is all this stuff, these notes and letters? And I was like, you would write a letter. I would write 2-3 page long letter to this girl in Ohio. Yeah, and I'd have to wait 2 weeks to hear back from her. You know what I mean? Like,
I understand.
And it's like the kids are like, they just think it's so funny, but then when they tell me how they make friends online, now I'm jealous that I didn't have that when I was a kid. So it's a really weird juxtaposition to be in as a parent, where you're like, I can see when kids are using it in a positive way, but I also see the negative side. You know what I mean? And my son and I, he's big into video games and stuff like that, and we talk about that every once in a while. We're like, you know, hey, let's get outside, let's do this, and it works. You know what I mean? If you don't nag, for me, if you don't nag and you don't hover over it, you know, it just happens. Like yesterday, he started his first soccer practice with the middle school. You know what I mean? So that was a winter of video games, and then now he's out, and now he's out in the world getting some sun on his skin.
Yeah, and that's beautiful. But I want to tell you, listen, people, as I said before, people are very different, and what works for one person may not always work for another.
Absolutely, and that's why I want to speak very much from my own experience and tell people that whatever works positively for you is what's working for you.
Yeah, and I always say, look, that's an important factor is if you're not hurting anyone else, then, well, you can try different things for yourself, see what works for you. But I got to also say that, you know, you mentioned the pen pal and the stuff we used to do back in, 20, 30 years ago. Our kids don't understand that. And what's interesting is we had that anticipation. You had that. It was more special, right? But it also felt special to you because, you're waiting for 2 weeks. You're like, oh, my God, I just got it back. But it made that relationship so much more precious, that response, and you were really focused. Now, when you're really connecting with, let's say, 1,000 people a day, not any one of them is that special.
It's all surface, yep.
Game of numbers. So, as you mentioned to me, they play video games. Well, this is no longer like a connection with another person. To them is just a video game, really, also. So they look at people, they look at you on the screen. Oh, look at that, it's like a character in a game. So there's no longer that human connection, which I think is so important. And then, him going to play soccer, or him doing any kind of in-person type of activity is so precious. And I think that's what's lacking a lot of times with this technology for the kids, because think about it, you had both ways. You had this, you had that. We kind of had both sides of it, right? To some degree, we experienced that human part, the pen pal part, and then now you can still connect with 1 billion people online. But people, imagine the kids, born 20 years ago or less, they don't know the other side of it. They only know that what you see right here on Zoom on the screen. And they're like, well, this is all there is to it. They don't know anything else. And yes, but these are the people that are going to be here 10, 20, 30 years from now, ruling the world, so to speak. So, but they, listen, deep inside, they're still the same human beings that you and I are, right? So genetically and otherwise, we're all the same humans. We all have the same emotions inside. It's just that, like, the way it's formulated now, it's a little bit, but it's affecting the world in a way that I think it's never really been known. And I think, going back to what we said before, it's such a crime to just not look at the person individually and just throw pills at them and whatever. I see that, one parent told me that they told his 9-year-old to take anxiety. I said, oh my God, are you kidding me? And how long did they spend, the time to analyze 20 minutes? I said, oh my God, are you kidding me? So once you, I don't know, may or may not be needed. And obviously medication is needed in a lot of cases. I agree with that. But in many cases, it's not. Yeah. But you want to spend the time and analyze, see what's really going on. For a 9-year-old to be jittery and to want to move, especially a boy, it's normal. It happens. It is what it is. But so we're going to give pills like unexpectedly anyone everywhere, 24/7. Let's just medicate them all and just get them all to be quiet and just sit down. That's a problem. And I think it all goes back to that patience. It goes back to that trying to learn more about the other person instead of just speed reading and kind of like going through the assembly line of people. And, listen, it's affecting everyone. It's affecting all these relationships. And, as much as it affects the child now, it's affecting the parent as well, because they see what's going on with their kid and it affects them emotionally. We're all kind of intertangled. We're all intertwined into this one larger mechanism, in a larger organism, so to speak, that we got to care about one another. And a lot of times what I see, and like you mentioned, the backlash, if you kind of support one way or the other, I try to work with people. I try to say, look, it's not about me at all. It doesn't matter what I think. What matters is you come to talk to me and you want to talk to me. You should want to talk to me. let's focus on you. Let's focus on makes you feel a certain way. Let's focus on tell me what your problem, tell me what you feel is the problem, and so on. Let's analyze what you are all about. Don't worry about me thinking one way. I'm never going to tell you to do something specific that's going to change your behavior in a way unless it benefits you. I'm only kind of giving you advice based on what you have, based on what you're telling me. So this is all entirely about you. And then, so, in a kind of, obviously I record a lot of media, I record a lot of videos and everything else. And people sometimes there is a question, well, how can you support? I say, I support you personally getting better within yourself and in your relationships with other people. If that means some sort of a compromise in terms of you listening to the other person more and longer, well, then that's so be it, because that's what it means to me, that you're going to have a better relationship, which means you're going to have a better life overall in your settings, not mine. After you and I speak, you may never see me again. It doesn't matter what I think. Let's focus on you.
Well, it's good you said that. It's to compare to, like, when, even not to do a contrast, but do a comparison. I mean, we talk about kids don't know this, kids don't know that back then, but there's one piece that is very similar, like you talked about with the media and the television. That two-dimensional television screen for me, my personal life is my parents met when they grew up literally across the street from each other. Their driveways connected in suburban Pennsylvania, right outside of Philadelphia. So they knew themselves since they were kids. And for me, when I got older into dating and things like that, I didn't understand any of it. And honestly, my parents couldn't help me with it because they didn't have to date. They just met and that was it. And then they were done. And they still are together today. So what I learned about love and all that stuff, I got from movies and I got from television, and I learned later in life that was the worst thing ever. Because it's one of those things where even so, I think of myself as an intelligent, thoughtful, logical person. I have irrational issues and stuff, so I have mental health issues with that and stuff like that. But at the same time, at the core, it's rational and it's logic. But at the same time with that, I look back and I'm like, look at how impressionable that was. And then you go back to that reflection, and I look at so many romantic relationships in my life, and I've been divorced, things like that. So that's all led to a misinterpretation of what love is.
Sure.
And so now I'm in this other journey on top of everything else, trying to figure out, okay, what does love mean to me? What does romance mean to me? Because the past 35 or 30 years was garbage, you know what I mean? Or 25 years, whatever it was, when I started dating people. And so anyway, I want people to listen to this and understand that there's help out there for those of you that are in need. Absolutely. There's immediate help. There's helplines. I'm going to put some in the description as well for immediate, instantaneous need. I'm also going to put all your information in for everything on the description as well. So if anybody's in the area of Princeton, New Jersey, and wants to work with you guys and reach out for some help, or has somebody that they want to refer to you, I want people to be accessible to everything that you have to offer.
Appreciate it, Ned. And it's Princeton, New Jersey. It's really Pennsylvania as well. We're really on the border, and we're on both sides. And like you said, a lot of it is, it should be made as available as possible. A lot of people should know about it, that this is available, and what the benefit will be for them. It seems a little bit of a reach for some people, and they're like, well, I don't know, it's for someone else. No, it's for a lot of people that you want to kind of look inside. Can I improve my life? It will make it so accessible to say, listen, you don't have money, don't worry about it. If you need help, it could be substance, it could be so many topics. You mentioned marriage and relationship. Oh my God, you have no idea how many people come with that. No problem. And I'll tell you, I'm married for 35 years at this point, so I certainly can tell you a few things about that. But all these issues are different for different people. People, what they should really learn, like I said, from this, give the information, but they should know that it's okay to reach out, and it's okay to look for that help, because some people they don't have the internal mechanism to get better, to progress on their own, and there's nothing wrong with that. We're all different. We're all built differently. And when that's the case, you want to seek that type of help, and it's perfectly okay, because it'll make you a better person. It'll make all the people around you better as well. It's so important.
Absolutely. I don't live with many regrets. I try to look at everything as life's lesson. I call it life's tuition. What I mean? Any money or whatever's lost. And I want everybody to understand that I want this stigma broken. I want people to reach out, and even if it's not professionally, I say this a lot, and I want to close with this: is reach out to an old friend. If you're alone and you have an old friend that you were friends with, and I tell people, that it's one of those things where I'm reconnecting with old friends all the time. Why? Because there's really, go back to the why for Simon. You know, it's why did you not stay friends with that person? Well, I went to high school, or well, we went to college, or well, we got married. And it's like, so you still are the same person, and they're still the same person. And what I found was, like, it's just incredible. It's absolutely incredible to like reach back with people. And what I'm also finding is people are in bad spots too, you know, and everybody's living in these isolated pockets. And I want people to be more open, and I want people to reach out. And, you know, I feel blessed in my life, you know, with the support system that I've had that helped me get through that. And I just want people to understand that if they don't have that support system, there are other support systems that are out there. Nobody is ever alone. So, in closing, though, I'm going to throw you a curveball that I'm doing this year. It's and I know the topic with mental health and things like that. I realize my topic is a little dark, but it's been with everyone is 3 songs you want played at your funeral. And I figure I'll just go with it. And
no, listen, there's nothing wrong with that. I wish I knew. I don't know.
I'm going to be building a Spotify playlist with everybody's answers. So I have about 50 so far. So yeah.
You know what's interesting for me? It's a tough question. I'll tell you why, because my musical interests are so varied. I listen to Metallica and I also listen to Phil Collins. So I don't even know.
Yeah, there you go.
I love Teddy Swims. So you never know what it is and what it is. At my funeral, I don't know. I would play something positive. I would play something. I don't even know. Like I said, Metallica. I would play something upbeat and say, "Listen, to me, and how old is we can kind of talk about it for another 3 hours." But I don't believe
for some humor, you want to kick it off with back.
Yeah, I want to look at it as continuation of life. So all of us, we're all here. We're all gonna die at some point. There's nothing wrong with it. Just life continues. I don't even personally think we ever die. I think we just keep evolving into something else. But I would play something positive. I would play Metallica. I would play, like I said, Phil Collins, upbeat songs. And I would play some Ricky Gervais or some comedian or something to get something upbeat on me, and I would try to get people to be not so sad, but remember the good positive things about interaction with me or something to that level. Something funny or something positive, and whatever it is, nothing comes. But like I said, I listen to so many different things. I love country music. I'll tell you that. So it don't matter. And it's interesting, like you mentioned, like depends on the mood that you're in, depends on the particular frequency you're in that day. That's what corresponds to the music. But for me, it would be a positive, something that just gets people going. I would listen to Robin Williams talking about something funny, and that's it. What else matters? You know what I mean?
You're hitting all the good ones, man. I add in George Carlin and some other ones, and then
that's it. I would say play that at my funeral. I don't care.
Just walk in and Eddie Murphy roll, just running the entire.
Get people to smile because it's already sad. It's already negative. Snap out of it. I don't want that. I don't want that on my account. I want people to feel positive, and that's it. I didn't know at that point. I didn't know where I am already, right? Because I'm already in a different planet, in a different world. Maybe I'm already a different person, a different butterfly or something. Who knows? But think about it positively. That's what I'd like people to experience. Yeah.
Perfect, Mike. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for your time today. And I'll remind everybody, there's no script, no agendas. This is a genuine conversation of 2 strangers. I've only known Mike 5 minutes for a discovery meeting prior to this conversation. So,
Nate, I applaud you for what you do, and I think it's so important today, especially. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mike, for your time, and thank you for the courage of coming out when there's no questions or anything like that, not knowing what you're walking into. So you have a good rest of your day, and thank you for what you do every single day.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Nate. Appreciate it.
Take care.
Take care.